Hello friends, I am Dr. Kuldeep Mahadikar, Associate Professor of the Department of English, Mahatma Phule College, Varur. And in this video, I am going to tell you about Shakespearean Tragedy, which is prescribed for BA Final Year Literature Syllabus for HGB Amravati University, Amravati. So let's start Shakespearean Tragedy. Tragedy is a play which is full of suffering and ends with death or a tragic death or tragic events. Shakespeare wrote several tragedies, but four of them, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, and King Lear, are the most remarkable. They are known as great tragedies. Aristotle, the great ancient philosopher and critic, laid down certain conditions for a tragedy. It is not known whether Shakespeare read Aristotle or not, means he read his poetics or not, Aristotle's poetics, but his tragedies have certain common characteristics or features which can be discussed as follows. The first most important characteristic is the high ranked hero. A Shakespearean tragedy has one central figure, the tragic hero. He is not a common man but a high ranked person. He is from a royal family or a royal society. He is not only socially eminent but has many qualities of head and heart. He has a great personality or strength too. Thus, Hamlet as a prince, young and clever. Macbeth is a warrior and king. Othello is a general and king. King Lear is an emperor. Antony and Cleopatra are also from royal families. Romeo and Juliet too belong to rich and royal families. Macbeth is described as Valor's minion, while King Lear is depicted as every inch a king. Thus, a Shakespearean hero is a great man physically and spiritually. Now we will talk about the second important characteristic, that is tragic flaw. The Shakespearean hero suffers from a defect or shortcoming. It brings about his tragic end. So, as the word calls it, tragic flaw, it proves to be fatal to him in the situation in which he is placed or circumstances in which he has to act. Thus, Macbeth has ambition for power, which proves fatal for him. The inaction of Hamlet is his tragic flaw. Antony's love for Cleopatra proves fatal to both of them. Similarly, Othello is over credulous and Lear is very rash or too rash in his decision, which is his tragic flaw. His rash behavior is his tragic flaw. Now we will talk about the third important characteristics. It is character and destiny. A Shakespearean tragedy is tale of suffering conducting to death, and this suffering and death are caused not by fate, destiny, or by some other outside agency, but by the action of the tragic hero himself. In a Shakespearean tragedy, character is destiny, as the actions of the hero issue out of his character. The hero has freedom to choose the actions, and yet he commits error after error. For example, Macbeth knows the hideous nature of the crime he is going to do by murdering King Duncan, but still he does the act and it brings out his doom. Hamlet knows that he should not delay his action, but he delays and it leads to his tragic death. And now we will move towards conflict. Conflict is soul of Shakespearean tragedy. It is of two types, external and internal conflict. The internal conflict goes on in the mind of the hero. The external conflict is between the hero and the villain or any other vicious character in the play. For example, in Hamlet, the external conflict is between Hamlet and either Claudius or Laertes. The internal conflict goes on in Hamlet's mind. He thinks and does not do the action or delays it. His 7 soliloquies shows the conflict of his mind. Means all his 7 soliloquies are a reflection of his mind. What is going on in his mind? Why he is delaying the action? Why he is pretending the madness? Means all we know all his psychological aspects from his 7 soliloquies. Then we come to the fifth point, that is catharsis. Catharsis is one of the elements of tragedy given by Aristotle. Shakespeare too followed it. Catharsis is the purgation or purification of the feelings of pity and fear. The Shakespearean tragedy definitely creates the feelings of pity and horror and fear. For instance, the ghost scene and the ending of Hamlet creates the feelings of horror and pity. The scenes of the witches and the murder of King Duncan in Macbeth create the feelings of pity and horror. The storm scenes and the scenes of King Lear's madness in King Lear arouse the feelings of pity and horror. So, in this way, the purgation and purification of the pity and fear in the audience's mind is the most important element of Shakespearean tragedy. Then we come towards the next point, it is comic relief. The comic relief helps the reader to get relief from the tragic tension in the tragedy. Shakespeare uses the fools to fulfill the purpose. In some plays, certain comic scenes are inserted for the purpose. The gravedigger scene in Hamlet, the porter scene in Macbeth serves as the example of the fact. The central figures in such scenes are common men, and Shakespeare often uses prose for their dialogues. Then we come towards the next characteristics, the next feature of Shakespearean tragedy, that is tragic irony. Tragic irony too finds expression in a Shakespearean tragedy. Many scenes in the field of Shakespearean tragedy contain tragic irony. For example, Othello doubts the character of Desdemona. He feels that she is guilty of adultery and kills her, but actually she is innocent and everything is planned by villain Iago. In Hamlet, Hamlet pretends to be mad, even in the presence of Ophelia. But Ophelia really becomes mad. The situation is ironical but tragic. Then we will move towards supernatural element, another important characteristics of Shakespearean tragedy. One more outstanding feature of the Shakespearean tragedy is the use of supernatural element. Shakespeare uses ghosts or witches to form the supernatural element in the tragedies. For instance, Macbeth meets 3 witches in his way, and they prophesize that he would become king. This creates lust in the heart of Macbeth, and finally he has to pay a big price for his mistake. Similarly, ghost plays a significant role in Hamlet. Then we will come towards the next point, that is chance or accident. In most of his tragedies, Shakespeare allows chance or accident an appreciable influence on some point in the action. At some point in the action, it is an accident, for example, that Desdemona drops her handkerchief at the most fatal moment. Macbeth is only tragedy by Shakespeare in which the element of chance is conspicuous by its absence. Then we will move towards the next point, that is lack of poetic justice. There is no poetic justice in Shakespearean tragedy. Poetic justice means that guilty should be punished and innocent should be rewarded, or at least freed from the danger. This is not found in Shakespearean tragedy. In it, the guilty persons suffer and are duly punished, but along with them, the innocent too suffer and sometimes die. In Hamlet, Claudius is punished, he is killed by Hamlet, but Hamlet, the innocent hero, too suffers and finally dies. Similarly, Ophelia, Polonius and Laertes die for no faults of them. In Othello, all Othello, Desdemona and Iago suffer equally. So in this way, Shakespearean tragedy, there is a lack of poetic justice. Then we come towards the next point, or we can say last point I will like to tell you, that is abnormal state of mind. The next feature of Shakespearean tragedy is that its hero often has an abnormal state of mind. So the actions done by the persons are not ordinary but extraordinary and are full of fantasy. For example, Lady Macbeth's sleepwalking scene has no influence on the succeeding events. The dagger scene in Macbeth and Lear's insanity are other examples of the fact. Thus, the Shakespearean tragedy has typical features. They make it resemble the Aristotelian concept of tragedy. It is thus classical in nature and modern tragedy in its complete contrast. So, thanks for listening my video on Shakespearean tragedy. In brief, I have tried to express and I tried to cover all the points. So please like, share and subscribe the channel. Thank you. Thank you particularly students who are going to benefit from this video.